As a continuation of demonstrations with decomposition reactions, a lot of times if you have a decomposition reaction, you need to test whether or not the gas is flammable. So how do you do that? You do that through what's called a burning splint test. Burning splint tests, as the name implies, use a wooden splint. It looks like a popsicle stick. But this stick you're actually going to burn. You're going to start a flame on it, blow out the flame, and only use the glowing coals that are on the stick. So this is something where you have to be very, very careful. Again, you notice I'm wearing safety glasses here. Safety precautions are a must. You should at no time drop this stick inside the test tube. You're going to gently lower the burning splint into the test tube where the flammable gases are being produced. Right? If flammable gases are produced, the coals on the stick should glow very brightly and sometimes might burst into flame again. In this case, you also need to be very careful because sometimes ashes, which are just mostly carbon, if they fall into the oxidizing material, in this case we're doing this demonstration with potassium chlorate that produces oxygen gas. If ashes fall into this test tube while this reaction is going on, you could get an explosion because carbon with an oxidizer is very similar to gunpowder. So be very, very, very careful doing this test. So before you put the coals or introduce the coals into the interior of a test tube, be sure you tap all of the ashes off the end of the splint before doing this test. So we're going to begin. Now how this works, you're going to need your Bunsen burner with a very hot flame. You need your splint, which we're going to light on fire. So I'm going to go ahead and get this stick or this splint burning effectively. As you can see, nice little flame. You need to let it go for a moment. As you can see, we have some glowing red coals. This is how you would tap the ashes off the end of that. Now I'm going to start my decomposition reaction. Using that hottest part of the flame to get this material started. Now, the reaction is going along very vigorously. Hopefully what you will see is this splint begin to glow brightly, maybe even. And there you go. You see it right there. A very good example of the splint glowing very, very brightly. Now I'm going to go ahead and end this reaction. So there you see a demonstration of how we test for flammable gases. Now, whenever you're in lab, it might be wise, if you're not used to doing this, not to do it as I did all by myself. I, after all, have been doing this for a little while, so I'm very comfortable doing this reaction. If you have a lab partner, have one partner heat the test tube while another lab partner lowers the glowing splint inside of the test tube. Now again, be sure, don't drop the splint into the test tube, ever. Do not ever do that. Hold on to it gently. All right? So, whenever you're doing this reaction, be very safe. Be very mindful that yes, you are heating glass. Anytime you have hot glassware, you can get burned because it looks the same, as you can tell in this video, as if I just picked a test tube out of a drawer. So be very careful with this reaction. Be very careful with this type. Had this been a negative test, as in the production of an inflammable gas, such as carbon dioxide, that splint, the coals on that splint would have been extinguished, and you would not see a glow in there. Now, other gases that are flammable that we typically see in chemistry labs are, yes, oxygen, as you just saw with this reaction, but also hydrogen gas, which sometimes occurs with the reaction of metals with acids, or sometimes, if they're very reactive metals, just with water itself. So this concludes this demonstration. Be safe, work hard.